One of the big decisions you make when you do enterprise security is how to engage third parties to help you. We all do it. Hire consultants, contractors, big groups to come in. And at one end of the spectrum, you have sort of those maybe small focused assistants, people who might be working, sitting amongst your team. At the other end of the spectrum, you spend a boatload of money on a big consulting house coming in and doing a project for you. I've got my friend here, John Frazzini. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of the pros and cons of that latter decision when you bring a big team in to do some work for you. What are the things, sort of pitfalls, and what are the things you can do to maximize that engagement as well? So stick around. I think you'll enjoy the discussion. Hi everyone, Ed Amoroso here. I've got my friend John Frazzini from X Analytics. We're going to talk about a topic you don't really hear much about, and that's kind of the pros and cons of dealing with the larger consulting firms. I almost can refer to them as the big four. Maybe there's more than four. John knows more about this than I do, but I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of advice about that decision we all make, because I'm a practitioner my whole career, and I've hired the big four multiple times. It's a hit in your budget, and maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but we're going to have a little discussion around that. John, you've spent a lot of time in and around these big four. Is it really four, or there's kind of more big consulting houses? I've often wondered that, the big four.
Well, you have a wide variety of different levels of consulting firms. Obviously, you have the big four that are out there probably serving some of the bigger organizations, but there's a sub-layer of consulting firms that exist out there.
And they're big, too. They're big.
Yeah, they're fairly big. I think very large, in not as big as the big four, but examples would be consulting firms like BPM or Crow. There's a wide variety of different mid-tier consulting firms that are providing, call it cyber assurance services, and then all the way down to the lower level, where you have a handful of folks that got together and created a boutique advisory firm where they're advising as well. So yeah, it's not just the big four out there. There's a wide variety of different consulting firms that are available in the marketplace to deliver what I call cyber assurance.
Let me lay out for you, as a practitioner, what my experience has been there. So usually there's some problem that needs to be solved, some big thing. I need an external assessment. I need some guidance on strategy, whatever. And oftentimes there's this idea that by hiring a big name with a big reputation, Deloitte, McKinsey, whatever, EY, that it's a safe route, because they've been in business a long time. They have methodologies, they have large teams, and you're not going to sink below a certain level. I mean, there's almost a low water mark there that you won't go below. You know that there's a minimum level of quality that you get. I think that's sort of the idea. And then if you're going into a boardroom or with senior leaders and you say, hey, we've hired, and then you mention some big firm, then usually there's this feeling like, oh, great, you hired a reputable organization. My experience, though, has been that that can be very uneven. Sometimes it's wonderful to get a really great team. They come in. Other times, maybe not so much. But give us some insight from your perspective. You've been at this a long time. What sort of a buyer's guide to dealing with this? Are there better organizations? Would a smaller one be better? A bigger one be better? Yeah, give me some tips here on how you handle this and jockey this problem.
Yeah, obviously what I'm about to say here, this is not a one size fits all comment, right? So, there's a lot of different variations in terms of how you can get value in this particular conversation. One of the things that I would say that might be a little bit more provocative at is this, okay? I actually don't think administering a cybersecurity program today, 2024, is all that complicated. If you compare to what has taken place over the course of the last 20 years. When this issue became an issue, cybersecurity became a function within business, it was a little bit more of the Wild West. There wasn't a lot of experience to understand what to do. So probably a lot more consulting was needed to try to figure out what the best way to build a program was.
We were creating a new discipline. I needed help. There's no question. Sure.
Yeah, a new discipline was being created. Expertise was being brought to bear. Money was being spent. Provocatively, what I would say today is, if you find yourself, you're a CISO, uh, uh, facing budgetary challenges. Let's just use some round numbers, and you're spending $1 million, $2 million a year on a big four to help you come up with your cybersecurity program. I would provocatively say I think you're a little bit living in the past.
Yeah,
It's
that's good.
it's not that complicated today to administer an effective cybersecurity program. What you need to do is widely understood. There's a lot of experienced people, one person, someone like yourself, or a wide variety of people who've sat in the chair multiple times. I find that taking a big four approach, generally speaking, outside of bespoke projects that need to be administered, let's take away implementation of things, but this is actually about, strategy and program advisory services. What a great place to save budget, right? If you're looking at $1.5 million,
Yeah,
$2.5 million spending, and you're asking a big four, you're asking them, you're literally buying a commoditized service at a premium price. You can get much better outcomes in the administration of your security program by taking a more modern approach. And so provocatively, what I would say is, this is not to poke the eye at the big four, but what I'd say is, and I've heard from several of them where they are sensing that a lot of the things that they're doing are commoditizing. It's very hard for them to get budget in some of the places that they used to easily get budget in. But if you're actually a practitioner, you're a CISO, and you're under budgetary pressure to try to, shave some budget here or there, oftentimes this is one of the biggest budgets you have. I would invite you to a world to get a better outcome by spending a lot less. I don't think the big four, now it's not to say that they don't do good work. I'm sure there's pockets of excellence there. But if you're spending that kind of money, I would venture a guess you're buying a commodity service at a premium price, and you probably can save 80% of your budget and get a better outcome if you just think it through a little differently.
It's funny. I rationalize a lot of budgets for CISOs. Our team at TAG does that. We'll look at the list. And John, I'll go through and see the eye-popping amounts of money that are spent with large consulting firms. And when we look at what comes out, the word generic seems to scream from every single page in the report. And there'll be these maturity sort of things where you're here and then you're there and then you're here and you're there. And you look at the background and it's things like your inventory could be improved, your identity and access management program scale, you should be thinking more about automation, you should be having a better security awareness program to reduce. It's like, dude, I could write that before I even start. Like ChatGPT will give me that. And you might be spending $1 million on this sort of thing. And I think, my God, like for some company, that's like 8 people you could hire.
This is my point. I believe, this is my opinion. I believe I don't believe the cybersecurity from a program management perspective, from the administration of a cybersecurity program in today's world is confusing. I think deploying a modern, high-performing cybersecurity program, if you're a CISO, is something that's well understood by many people. That was not the case.
On the word program there, because when you get down into the details, you're doing forensic analysis on some crazy traffic. It gets very complicated. But I'm with you that programmatically, we've developed a discipline that's reasonably predictable and somewhat repeatable from one place. So setting up program, I agree with you. I don't think that is a controversial statement. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of CISOs moving away from big four engagements into very efficient programs where they're getting fantastic outcomes in terms of how they're administering their strategy. Because to your point, there's a lot of things that work has to be done in different aspects of security, and you got to hire consulting firms oftentimes to augment. Putting that aside, I get that. But in terms of guiding you to understanding how you can implement a strategy that can be effective for you to deliver success in your position, I would venture a guess that you could save a lot of money. Some of the techniques are widely available, and all you need to have is the confidence to move in that direction. So, look, I mean, people are going to spend the money how they want to spend money. I just think that if you're spending 7 figures or above on strategy or program management related to your CISO function, you're really just buying a commoditized service, and it's a great opportunity to find budget efficiency by taking a different approach. Maybe I am poking my finger in the eye of the big four, but so be it. What they're doing is just not that unique and distinctive. Many of them will say it. You're paying a premium. And to your point, maybe there's safety in that premium because it's like, oh, I hired a big four and they helped me do something. And if that's important to you to have that backstop, then I guess you're buying that. But what I would say from a program administration perspective, you don't need it. It's a commoditized service. And outside of the branding of those particular big four, I personally believe you can get a lot more bang for your buck by taking a different approach.
Yeah, there's a few words that come to mind here. So first off, there are times when you need independence. So you and I would both say, yeah, there are scenarios that emerge where it's not appropriate or optimal for an internal team to be placing a mirror on itself and rendering some judgment. So the consulting process, I think we would both agree, has a place, and independence is a very specific case where there's no question, like audit. Of course, you don't audit yourself. I mean, you pre-audit yourself. You have internal audit, but that's separate function. So that would be one. The second is the word expertise. Like I've often found that when an internal team lacks expertise in a certain area, for example, you work for Acme Consolidated Industries, you're located in the US and Canada, and then you find out, hey, we're opening a factory in Singapore. And you go, Sing a what? And they go, yeah, and we better get the security right. You need to know what all the rules, the laws, the regulations. It's like, maybe a consultant would be a good idea. Someone who's worked in that region. Like I love that. I think surgically that sort of thing makes a lot of sense. So I'm all for it. And the big fours are good for that. And maybe it costs a lot, whatever. You're probably going to have a hard time finding an expert who knows the cybersecurity rules in Singapore. But I'll bet EY, KPMG, they probably have somebody great. Go do that. Where I've always had a problem is when an internal team could do something, like if there's the strategic roadmap for how we improve identity and access management, the internal team has to execute on that, and they could do it. It's when, John, you see the work pushed off or dished off to a third party out of convenience, where it's like, let them lay it out. The board will trust what they say. We'll tell them more or less what needs to be done, but they'll just write it. And then it's our voice funneled through them using their reputation to come back and do more or less what we sort of told them to do. That is a waste of money. That is just, it's just flushing money down the toilet to me.
Yeah, if you're looking for a security blanket, you can buy plenty of blankets. Right? There's plenty of blankets in this industry that you can buy in context to a budgetary conversation, right? Because this isn't, if you're looking for budget efficiency and you're looking to get a better outcome by spending less money, and we hear this all of the time from our CISO customers. I don't know if this is I don't think that this is necessarily a macro trend, because I've seen some conflicting evidence that the CISO budget is increasing. I've also seen evidence that it's decreasing. I'm not entirely sure there. Maybe you
like it's in 2024. I see a lot of very small increases in budgets or flat. That seems like the majority of cases to me.
Yeah, so let's say it's generally flat, which means let's say half of the CISOs out there are probably being challenged to get more efficient with their budgets. Let's say half. That's just subjective. And so you need to find places to bring forward budget efficiency, right? And this is low-hanging fruit for budget efficiency. If you're trying to buy a security blanket from the big four to offload effectively a lot of the things that you should probably be doing yourself with your team, or augmenting your existing team, or finding more efficient resources to get a better outcome, this is a great opportunity to move away from some of those security blanket commoditized services and move into a more budget efficient environment. And we are seeing a lot of customers, a lot of people in the marketplace asking the question, I'm being asked to cut my budget by X percent Can you help us make this decision? Because we want to still get a good risk, performance outcome, but we're being told that we need to spend less money, and this is against the backdrop, Ed, where historically the cybersecurity conversation was an annual increased budget conversation, right? You're starting to see a little bit, if it's flat today, it wasn't flat 10 years ago, year over year. The expectation was more money was going to be spent on cybersecurity. I think that used to be normalized. I think the world we live in today, I think there's a shift there. Budgets are under pressure. The CISO function is being asked, maybe not everywhere, but in a lot of places, to get more bang for their buck in terms of what they're doing. The hard facts of budget cuts are going to be hitting several of them, and they're looking for low-hanging fruit. You bring up the topic of using the Big Four. In my assessment, what I see in several examples is it's a great place to cut some low-hanging fruit. You can still get fantastic program performance related to what you're doing by seeking alternative available resources that are a fraction of the cost of the Big Four. If you're looking for the security blanket and you still have the budget, go for it. If you're looking for budget efficiency, I think you've pointed out that you guys have done a study. There's a lot of bloat there, and frankly, a lot of the services are commoditized. You can get elsewhere for a
There's
lower budget.
one evil practice that I see. Maybe it's not evil, but it seems like it is when you hire a big consulting firm and they come in and they identify a problem and then they want to build a prototype, like build a product or something.
Right.
And you're paying for this. And again, I'm in a research and advisory business. I could show them like your platform. I'll bet you see a lot of the Big Four like trying to reproduce a commercial platform, and you think you're paying a consulting firm to build a prototype of something you could buy from a vendor. I can see that over and over and over again. John, you might as well just take the money and whip it out the window, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. I don't see a real, it just seems like a waste to me.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we seen that? This is a broken record at this particular point, Ed, whether, some consulting firm who alleges that they can build X, Y, or Z. The answer is always the same. The same cost overruns, difficult to maintain and manage as years go by. We've walked in, we have a Fortune 10 customer right now that did exactly what you just said. After 2 years, out of nowhere, we get an email saying, hey, we'd like to bring you guys back in. We tried it. It wasn't that they couldn't do it. It's that you're managing a product. You have to maintain it. You have to continue to spend money on it. And that's where the commercial marketplaces come in place.
It's billable out. I mean, really, when you work in a consulting firm, and you and I are both insiders here, it's billable hours of the units. So if you can get, we're paying you to build a prototype and roll it out. It's not about the product, it's about the billable hours.
In this Fortune 10, I was told that over $20 million was spent to try to do a particular project that you're describing. And that instrumentation through commercial software could have been delivered for less than $250,000. And so they literally spent, they acknowledged they spent $20 million. They didn't get the outcome, and they could have 2 years ago done something for a lot less. Look, here's the deal, Ed, here's what you get. And this is whether it's scope creep, but there's a bigger thing that goes on with the consulting firms. They're never interested in really wrapping up anything. They always want to make a
perpetual, billing. That's the idea.
Yeah, they want to make a mountain out of a molehill. So if they find a hill, it has to become a mountain. And then you end up with these projects that you just described where the advisory outcome is that you should do better with your inventory management as the recommendation. And you just spent, making up numbers, that was a $350,000 assessment to tell you that you should improve your inventory management process. It's like, okay, it's like, making a mountain out of a molehill is what you end up with. It's really hard once you bring them in to get them out. There's always going to be another mountain that needs to be built on some topic that you probably don't need. So at the end of the day, when it comes to the Big Four, if you're looking for that security blanket and you just want to kick the can down the road and not really go anywhere very fast, it's a great option. Let's just put it to a point. And from my perspective, there's so many better ways in today's world with all of the experience, shared experience across our industry to get fantastic risk program outcomes by spending far less money. You don't want to be the person that always says, look, in today's world, I don't think asking for budget increase is kind of the best thing to do. You know,
No.
you're you're swimming against the current. What you should be thinking about doing is, how do I get budget efficiency with what I'm about to do? How do I get and expect this? How do I get a better risk program outcome by spending less money? That will be music to the ears of your CFO. It'll be music to the ears of your organization. The day that the CISO comes forward and says, I am delivering a better outcome, and by the way, I'm giving budget back, here's what I've done. That is the future CISO that I see. It's not everyone today, but that's the future CISO that I see. Somebody that is in tune with the business, understands that financial performance matters. You have to deliver success. And if you can do that, to your point, if you can do that in a confident, commanding way, by spending less money, you're going to be a superhero within that organization.
We're going to close with that music to our ears, ringing in the ears of all the people who've been watching. So, John, we'll come back for some more discussion, but thanks for your great advice. Very candid. Thank you.
You got it, Ed. Thanks.